All right, welcome back for round two of Modern Mondays. This round, we have for you Hardened Scales versus five color Whirza. So,
Battle of the Mox Opals.
I love it. Eight Mox Opals, my favorite. Who do you like here?
That is an excellent question. I mean, even if this matchup had a clear favorite, there is a lot of play on both sides. Arcbound Ravager and Word of Invention, both very difficult cards to use. Lots of different ways to use them. And on top of that, both decks have lots of cards like that that have many decisions. So it's really going to come down to the players, I think.
Yep, the players and the draws, I think. I I tend to think. All right, so here we go. Actually, this is a pretty typical start for the Wurza deck of all varieties. We're seeing a fetch for a snowland into an astrolabe, and then
Lots
we're
of
gonna
zeros.
immediately metalcraft up, have that mox opal. Let's see if we've got another one to follow. Bobble you. I would say that there's a little bit of equity to be gained in using the bobble a little differently. You could bobble yourself and then crack your fetch if you don't like the card on top. So that's just sort of one way of using bobble.
Yeah,
Now,
as
if you,
long as you have a fetch land or a non-fetch land.
he had the scalding tarn.
Yeah, as long as you had a non-fetch land, in case because I'm assuming he's
That's
casting
true.
the Astrolabe.
That's true. If you want to cast the astrolabe and you don't have another option, well, he was able to bobble bobble mox. Hmm. We'll see. If he doesn't have another land, I think you're right.
And it looks like he might be light on lands here.
Opal helps. And he
Opal,
had the extra draw off the bobble and can take another one too.
the fact that he ran out the Mox Opal turn one like that also represents potential Galvanic Blast. There's a card that the Wurza deck does sometimes main deck.
Yeah, I've been seeing that a little more recently, usually a couple in the main. I believe the Chromatic Star was probably his draw since he didn't cast it off the Mox last turn.
Most likely, although he could have been holding up that aforementioned Gal Blast.
True. Eli, on the other hand, with the pretty much ideal Hardened Scales start, much quicker than the Wurza start, just Forest Hardened Scales. Set it up, get it going. Double all those counters.
Hardened Scale is definitely the card you want to see on turn one. Anytime your deck's named after a card, after all.
The namesake.
The name's
So let's see what he can follow with. We've got a second land. What do we got? I think I see a Steel Overseer in hand.
Steel Overseer very strong down the line, but it's unclear how many turns this game will last.
I might be mistaken. I definitely see a Walking Ballista. And a Metallic Mimic, so I would imagine that the play here is Metallic Mimic. Boom. And... oh, Steel Overseer. I may have been wrong about the Mimic.
There's the
you're right,
Galvanic
there's the
Blast.
Galblast. Well read.
Well, it is red.
Ha 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 ha.
Oh, it looks like Jeremy might have... Did he remember to draw off of that second bobble?
We may have missed a bubble trigger. I didn't notice exactly. I would maybe crack that star off the Mox here. Awkward. I hope we have another artifact. We do. All right. We're back in business. We're going to crack another one.
Find that second land?
It would be really nice.
No such
This
luck.
is a really unlucky draw. This many redraws, you should really find a land by now. Worth noting the mana base in these Wurza decks. Oh, we did it! We found a breeding pool.
With a blue floating. Astrolabe represents any spell that you want.
Are we shocking? No. Okay. Not shocking. Okay. So we have only a 1 mana play available, I'm assuming. Here's a Pithing Needle. Oh, you have your choice.
Oh, no, I still have blue flame. Oh, you still have blue flame. Yeah, that's fine.
And so I'm really not a fan of running out the preemptive Pithing Needle here. You don't know what to name because you don't know when it's in his hand. And even if you do happen to name a card in his hand, he's simply not going to play it.
So, yeah, there are two sides to this. I don't love preemptive Pithing Needle against a deck like Hardened Scales that has approximately 60 potential names that are useful. You can imagine that Eli does not have an Inkmoth Nexus, or he would have run it out already on turn 2.
Most likely, yes.
However, it is possible that Jeremy just needs to set up Metalcraft again in a mana-efficient way.
That is true. It is possible that he really needs this third artifact, so he has to run it out.
Right. If next turn he doesn't have a 0 and it's going to cost him a mana to reactivate the Mox. So what do we have from Eli here?
I would also mention that it's decently likely Jeremy has the Urza in hand, so he's really hoping to spike a land off the top with this line.
That would make a lot of sense. Just trying to make sure he has 4 whenever he can. Alright, what do we got? What do we got?
Eli's deep in the tank.
Which 2-drop? Here's Metallic Mimic. We're going to name Construct. Walking Ballista with 3 counters.
Go ahead.
Looks like 2.
Is Walking Ballista a Construct?
Yes.
So it gets a counter off Metallic Mimic and a counter off Hardened Scales?
Mm-hmm.
Oh, he played it on 0. Never mind.
A neat little trick.
Free Ballista. Here's a Mox. Here's your
the
4
Urza.
mana. Here he is. Look at him.
The
Here's
man,
a
the
Construct.
myth, and the legend.
He's the best. That's 3 Mox Sapphires. Not to mention Mind's Desire on a stick.
Yeah, who doesn't like drawing cards?
See, actually, I learned this recently. Oh, here's Bridge. That's going to push Eli all in on the Walking Ballista plan. I actually didn't catch the name with Pithing Needle. But if you had Bridge available, I'm pretty sure you just name Walking Ballista straight up.
Seems like a logical conclusion. Arcbound Ravager can do some tricky things.
But the Hardened Scales deck doesn't run the 0 power creatures that Classic Affinity does, so trying to get under a bridge that's fully dropped and then just pile on with an instant speed Cranial Plating or with a bunch of Ravager counters is not an option here.
Yeah, it's a lot harder to do that. The second Ballista means that Urza is very killable, provided that this Pithing Needle is not on Ballista. But it looks like it may be.
I imagine if we don't see an assassination of a certain artificer this turn, then that needle is naming Ballista. Swing. Getcha. No blocks.
Precise play from Eli here, swinging before pinging down the Urza.
Yes.
Go ahead.
Yeah. So I'm going to say that that needle's on Ballista.
Wouldn't he have blocked if it was?
That's a fact. No. Because if the needle was on Ballista, you sack Ravager to itself and make it a 4/4. 5/5.
Is Lantern Control still playable, or did it transform to Whirza?
Lantern Control is dead. I have emotions about this. Whirza is an extremely different deck. Lantern Control is a hard prison deck. Oh, this is the worst thing to have off of Urza. Go get a bauble. Lantern Control is a hard prison deck. It aims to completely lock the opponent out of the game, using primarily a library lock, but it also contains a smorgasbord of other prison pieces, Ensnaring Bridge, Pithing Needle, whatever you need for the matchup. However, it is stone dead to Stony Silence. We used to just have Stony Silence, and now we also have Collector Oof and Karn. So...
The great creator himself.
So,
yeah, definitely a big problem there.
Yeah, I would recommend not picking up Lantern Control right now. The Whirza deck is much more flexible. It has a mid-range plan. It has lock pieces, but it's not a hard prison deck, and it just has a combo finish. So often
It also has much better card advantage, too.
The card advantage in Lantern comes from a different angle. It's not about drawing a ton of cards, especially because you are very dependent on Ensnaring Bridge and don't want to, but it comes from fixing your own draws. We are Galv Blasting Metallic Mimic, sacking to Ravager, but Bridge is now at 1 card, so nothing's going to get through on the swing.
Yeah, provided that Pithing Needle is in fact still on Ballista, which it looks like at this point it certainly is.
So the thing about Lantern Control and card advantage in Lantern Control is you acquire it by aiming your Codex Shredders at yourself. I believe that it is vital when playing Lantern Control to prioritize fixing your own draws. Mill what you absolutely have to and spend the rest of the time fixing yourself. I think that's a fundamental of Lantern Control.
Yeah, and the more cards in the format that you just can't beat, the worse position the deck is.
Does Eli have any outs here? I don't think so. If Jeremy gets a card and there are a lot of hanger back tokens, that's one thing, but
at this point there isn't any card that could be caught in his hand.
I'm not sure what he's going to do about that needle.
Yeah, and I do not believe that they main deck any ways of getting rid of a Pithing Needle.
No. I'm getting a little ahead of myself here, but I have peeped Eli's sideboard, and there are 4 Nature's Claim available.
Yes, very much a different story post-sideboard.
100%. Yeah, we have no library manipulation effects. Oh, that's a pretty good one. We have no library manipulation.
The second piece of the puzzle.
Yes. We have no library manipulation effects at play here, so we do not really need to shuffle with Urza for his Mind's Desirability. Oh, yeah. Oh, yep. Warforthopter Foundry. I believe we're done here. I am assuming most of you are familiar. So, Jeremy freely admitting that he does not have the win condition in his deck that doesn't pass the turn.
You can do it and make all the things. I think I'm trying to think if I can draw anything.
Yeah, Eli's thinking about his outs. Jeremy gonna make arbitrarily large numbers of Thopters, go to an arbitrarily high life total.
I appreciate how he keeps pulling the Thopters out of his token box.
I appreciate that as well. So some of these Whirza builds previously have been running.
I think it's probably fine. I can't.
Previous builds of the Whirza deck have been running ways to win the game without passing the turn. Originally, there were a lot of lists running Spine of Ishsaw, which technically doesn't win the game, but does pass the turn with your opponent having literally no permanents.
That's a pretty good position to be in.
Yeah, it's hard to lose from there. The other one I've seen is Scrap Trawler and Pyrite Spellbomb, the old-fashioned little loop.
The loop there being that once your Pyrite Spellbomb dies, you get back Mox Opal to produce the red needed for the loop, and sacrificing Sword of the Meek will bring back the Spellbomb.
Are we off? Okay. Yes, and so the Scrap Trawler triggers will... The Scrap Trawler triggers will allow you to recycle the spellbomb. And the key to close the loop in the Whirza deck specifically is the ability to sack the sword.
Do all the things, and the sword was still in the graveyard, and I was like,
so most notably, the more recent Urza lists have stopped running a non-pass-the-turn win condition just because the number of matchups where it matters are pretty few in number. Things like Infect can make it matter, but for the most part, not highly relevant and not worth adding slots for. So let's take a look at what our players have available for their sideboards. For Eli, we are looking at 4 Nature's Claim, 3 Dismember, a Torpor Orb, a Spellskite, a Karn Scion of Urza, 3 Damping Sphere, and 2 Graph Digger's Cage. What do you like here?
I mean, the Nature's Claims are pretty clearly good here. Being able to break up the combo is good. Being able to blow up Ensnaring Bridge, very important.
And Pithing Needle.
Pithing Needle, another strong one. Damping or Dismember is potentially a card you want to consider.
I like Dismember here a lot.
Yeah, killing Urza is really nice. Killing Goblin Engineer can come up.
Yeah, honestly, if Jeremy can assemble the combo, I mean, that's it. He has no outs whatsoever, and so it is absolutely vital that Eli be able to remove pieces of that combo and get through for the win before Jeremy goes off. Jeremy's sideboard, we are seeing something that's actually very common now in the Whirza decks is people have moved away from white and Teferi Time Reveler in exchange for Assassin's Trophy. So Jeremy with 3 copies of Assassin's Trophy in the sideboard, another Pithing Needle, 2 Tezzeret, Agent of Bolus, a Thoughtseize, a Spellskite, a Porphyry Nodes, which is not a common one. We could talk about that. A Welding Jar, 2 Leyline of the Void, 1 Nature's Claim, a Damping Sphere, and a Graph Digger's Cage. I love these one-ofs. I'm a big fan of one-ofs all over the sideboards. So, against Hardened Scales, what do you like?
That is this one's a lot harder. I think you could definitely make a case for the Nature's Claim. That's a pretty easy one. Pithy Needle's probably pretty strong as well. And I would imagine you probably want to sub Welding Jar in for a different artifact, just because of the Nature's Claims in the opposing sideboard. But beyond that, it's a little bit harder to figure out what else you want. Trophy is a strong one, but it's a little bit hard to cast, and you don't always need that kind of effect. And Porphyry Nodes, I don't think you want it in this matchup, just because Eli's deck goes really wide with cards like Hangerback Walker. Arcbound Worker also makes that card look a lot worse.
Yes. I agree about Porphyry Nodes not being what you want here. Eli's deck is pretty threat light, which is sort of an argument for Assassin's Trophy, but you're right, there's a lot of things that can be sacked in response. You know, you can't really Assassin's Trophy a Ravager terribly effectively. You can't Assassin's Trophy a Hangerback Walker. I actually like Leyline of the Void here. So if you are not familiar, Modular is a death trigger, and therefore if a creature with Modular is not put into a graveyard, Modular doesn't function. So you completely cut off Arcbound Ravager with no additional work using Leyline of the Void. So I think he only has 2. It's not too heavy an investment. It can come down later in the game and still be good, because the thing when playing against Hardened Scales is a lot of your hate, even if you play it later, can force them into positions that they don't want to be in. So they're looking to board, they're trying to build up a kill. You play a Pithing Needle, they have to figure out how they want to reorganize. You play a Leyline of the Void, they have to figure out how they want to reorganize. And you're forcing them maybe down a suboptimal route, and then also crippling them from there forward. It's not the end of the day, but like, it's helpful.
Yeah, Leyline, it has an effect in the matchup. Shutting down some of their stronger cards can be nice. I think that the opportunity cost of putting it in your deck is kind of high, just because it's pretty difficult to cast. If you draw it, 4 mana is a lot. But I definitely think it's a card to consider.
I don't think it's too hard to cast in this deck specifically. I think I like it over Trophy. I would go Jar to Leyline, claim Pithing Needle. And that keeps you...
And I think you also want the Spellskite, because Ensnaring Bridge is one of your more important cards, so protecting that is really good.
Yeah, if you have enough cards to take out, I would bring the Spellskite as well.
Yeah, I think it like is
How do we feel about Druid Devastation decks versus Urza?
And Jund versus Urza.
Jund versus... So I recently played Urza against Jund in an incredibly tight match that came down to us both completely wasting each other's boards post-sideboard, and, you know, he found the answer before I found my answer. But I think that matchup's pretty close and can come down a lot to the draws.
And that's another matchup where the player skill will matter a lot, with
Absolutely.
lots of decisions in a prolonged game.
Yes, my opponent prioritized Bloodbraid Elf to just put pressure on me when he had trophies available. So we see here, turn 0, Leyline of the Void. Jeremy deciding that it was reasonable.
Yeah, Leyline, certainly very strong on the play, or excuse me, in the opener. Eli will have to completely reconsider his plan now, most likely.
Yes, he may have kept a hand that gets kind of hosed by this. Not necessarily, but we'll see. Devoted Druid decks against Urza.
So the Devoted Druid matchup is pretty rough game 1. If you can find a fast needle, then you can win, but they will have a lot of games that just end with them going turn 2 Druid, turn 3 combo, kill you.
So I think you get a lot of help from the Galv Blasts now.
Galvanic Blast is another nice one. But in general, between Mother of Runes and all the tutors for redundancy, it's very difficult to stop them from going off before you can go off yourself. But you do have access to a Word of Invention for Pithing Needle, as well as Pyrite Spellbomb, so you're not dead in the water.
I run 2 Pithing Needle, just because it's great.
Yeah,
it's a great
Pithing
card.
Those Lantern players sure love their Pithing Needles, don't they?
I mean, I just love Pithing Needle. I'll play it in every deck. I'll play extra copies. You can't stop me.
But yeah, and then the matchup post board against The Druid Devastation deck is a little more complicated, with a lot more disruption out of the Urza deck, and not many huge improvements from the Devoted deck. Getting Collector Oath is nice, but not a huge deal, I don't think.
It's more impactful, I think, in the Urza deck specifically because it shuts down Thopter Foundry and turns off your combo until you can remove it, and it's just more taxes on your removal when you're trying to stop their combo. So, Eli, Darksteel Citadel into Ballista on 1. Not the most explosive start. Jeremy gonna play a Pirate Spellbomb, and we're gonna take out the Ballista right away. Please take 1, sir. Down to 18.
Take 1 for your troubles.
Not what you want to be seeing from Eli's perspective. Next turn. Let's see what we can get. Welding Jar. Where was that last turn? Not that I'm sure the Ballista on 1 was really what you wanted to be doing. We're going to cycle a Waterlogged Grove here. Try to get a redraw. Hardened Scales doesn't really need 4 mana sources. Oh, but no play from Eli is a little scary.
And this play sort of tells me that Eli has a lot of sideboard cards in his hand. The fact that he's just doing nothing on his 3rd turn with no board state means he probably has a bunch of cards like Nature's Claim in his hand. But it looks like that's also incorrect, as he does not cast anything on the end step.
No claim end step for the Thopter Foundry. Also, if you're Eli and you have a claim, I would point it at the ley line if you had any modular creatures available. If you have a Ravager in hand, you take out that ley line.
That's true. That is another line available.
We may be waiting for the Thopter to hit the Thopter Foundry in response to another piece, perhaps?
That's true. There is no real rush to do anything if you don't have any modular creatures. I imagine Eli would have run out the Arcbound Workers by now just to have
absolutely
something in play.
There's no reason to hold them in hand, even if the modular doesn't work.
And there is the second half of the combo. We will see if Eli has a response now. Looks like he does not.
Not
so
looking
really,
good.
really big trouble for Eli here.
The Thopter Foundry Sword of the Meek combo, even without the Infinity button from Urza, is actually really strong. I have to say, the number of games against aggressive decks that have ended on fair Thopter Sword. What do we got? We're going to claim the Thopter Foundry in response. So we chose this moment to do it.
Yeah, so you're going to go to 22?
So we're going to end up here with 1 Thopter.
And it's interesting to see that Eli was holding on to that claim for so long. But maybe he was waiting to get some more information about what the best target for it was.
It's possible.
And it looks like he also has a Dismember in his hand, as well as at least 1 land and 1 Mox Opal.
Yeah, if you have the Dismember... You know, I would not want to sit on Dismember with Thopter Foundry and Sword of the... Oh, this is the problem. Thopter Foundry and Sword of the Meek in play. You do not want to be leaning on Dismember to disrupt the combo, because if your opponent plays Urza, you're done.
Yeah, if Urza's on the battlefield for even a moment, the Dismember won't save you, because in response to the Dismember, they can just go infinite.
Yep.
Provided they have at least 1 extra mana.
Usually Sword of the Meek functions as 1 extra mana.
The old Mox Sapphire sword.
It's so beautiful. It's raining blue mana. Hallelujah. We're going to sack Sword of the Meek to Thopter Foundry. Gain a life. Get a token. Trigger sword.
Gain a life and get a Thopter. You gain a life and get a Thopter. This triggers the sword.
Trigger.
Triggers the sword.
What do we
So
got?
it looks like he's thinking about trying to Dismember and
We're going to Pendlehaven the Thopter in response.
unfortunately, that does not have the intended effect, as Sword of the Meek only cares about the size of the creature when the ability goes in the stack, not when it resolves.
Take a look if there's an intervening if clause.
It will still come into play. Yes, I think so. Yes. Yeah.
Sword of the Meek. Here's Sword of the Meek. Yes, there is no intervening if clause here. You are correct, Devin. So, some triggered abilities are worded
So I guess
such
I'm wondering,
that.
do I have a window to hit this before this triggers? No.
It would have to be a static build, like
Yeah.
Yeah.
I think
So,
that's true. All right, that's
some
fine.
triggered
That
abilities
works.
have an if clause
If
that will
seen it
cause their trigger condition to be checked both on trigger and on both when they are put on the stack and on resolution. And if either one
14.
doesn't meet the condition, then the ability is removed from the stack. But Sword of the Meek, not one of those. Jeremy on Gemstone Caverns here. That's an interesting choice.
Yeah, one of Gemstone Caverns, potentially very good in the super fast, fast-paced matchups.
It's
But-
interesting he's treating the deck more like a fast combo deck and less like a mid-rangey kind
Yeah,
of deck.
it's definitely an interesting approach. Another valuable thing about it is that the fact that it taps for any color when you go second with it is really strong when you're playing 5 sideboard colors.
Yeah, the Whirza deck, pretty much all variants of it at this point,
4 times.
those mana bases are absolutely miserable. you can fetch yourself straight out of the game. Trying to get snow, trying to get your colors, trying to have
Yeah,
trophy available straight out of your land base in
Yeah.
case you get oofed when you don't have it. Ugh.
trying to
That's a
cast
mess.
Arkham's Astrolabe, Whir of Invention, and Assassin's Trophy in the same deck is a bit tough.
Yeah. Half the time I'm just cracking a turn 1 fetch land and praying that I don't draw something that makes it screw up.
Although Arkham's Astrolabe is kind of nice in that regard, smoothing out some of the mana problems the deck has.
Yes. Oh, Astrolabe. Astrolabe. 1 mana Prophetic Prism. So strong. The opportunity cost of running Snowlands is relatively low, though as these mana bases get more and more pushed, it's getting higher and higher. But once you have the Astrolabe, it can give you the whatever color you need. So fetching up a single colored land is not as bad. Hardened Scales. Little late to the party here, unfortunately. A lot of Thopters, a lot of life. I'm not loving Eli's chances from here.
Yeah, I feel like at the point where the Hardened Scales deck is no longer able to put the Urza deck under pressure is really where it starts to lose a lot of ground. These longer games where the Hardened Scales deck doesn't have a ton of material on the board with which to get something going, it's a lot harder to make that work.
Sack Opal to Arcbound Ravager, add 2 counters due to Hardened Scales, but we've just got a 3/3 here. We're gonna go to combat. We're gonna... Are we worrying for bridge? It seems
The ultimate
like
kick in the
overkill,
teeth.
but you know.
Okay. Get a bridge.
Yeah, we are overkilled here. We are gonna not have that 3/3 attack.
You will not even touch me, says Jeremy James.
And he's still got a land to make the lethal Thopter this... Oh, he's got an extra one there. Never mind. He has 6 1/1 Thopters, so what'll happen is Jeremy's going to draw his card for turn. His 1/1s are going to be free to fly over.
Except for the
and
2/3.
well, not that one, but if you notice, he already has 6. And if he needs to, he can fetch up another land and make another one. So, unfortunately for Eli... Ugh.
Looks like it's lights out.
What can men do in the face of such reckless hate?
Mm.
It's a lot of hate.
That is a lot of hate. Some people just hate the combat step. That's why they play Ensnaring Bridge.
I wouldn't know anything about that.
I
It's the ensnaring bridge phase. What happens in combat? You ask me how many cards are in my hand, and then you pass.
Four-lander.
That's how Magic was meant to be played.
When
I agree.